to week 5 of our Guillotine League. We have lost 4 members already, 14 to go. This was our closest and probably craziest week, both on the top end and the bottom end. Fleming, Zach, and Brian all had incredible weeks where a lot of us were grouped in the mid to low 80s there at the bottom. Chris gets chopped with a margin of loss of 0.4, which that could be the smallest margin of loss in the entire year. Fleming sets a new weekly high for us, 144.66. I imagine we're going to see scores go down this week. There's been so many injuries. There are 4 teams on byes with important players on all of those teams. I imagine our low score definitely dips back into the 70s. I mean, there's a chance we get a team in the 60s if they have a really rough week. But I think if you hit 80 this week, you're definitely going to be safe. We say goodbye to Chris, and man, he had just a roller coaster of a week. He had great performances from Tyler Warren and Judkins, Cam Scatabo. He had Lamar leave with an injury. David Montgomery was terrible. Wan'Dale Robinson was not great. He was definitely, I think he was a good add later on for another team. DJ Moore is not good. Now he's on a bye. JMO, I feel like the Lions offense is tough. You never know who's going to go off. JMO could get you 20 points, but he could also get you under 5 pretty easily. And then the real tough one is Jamar Chase with 4.8. Fab updates and talk about the trade that Chris and I had. 2 people are still at 1,000. So Jay and Brian are at 1,000 Fab. I think Jay is at 1,000 Fab unintentionally. Brian is there because he's just not bidding high on a lot of these players. Landon still has a good amount. Johnny has a good amount. But then on the flip side, Kevin and Zach, they don't have a whole lot. Fleming 303, where there's a pretty big shift in the market where the top guys have a lot of the money, and the bottom group is going to have to hold on to that $200 for quite some time. We have a long way to go. You don't want to be out of your money at this point. I'm lower than I'd like to be right now, just under 700, but I feel okay about that. So really the big trade of the week was Chris and I swapped Devon Achane and Bajal Tootin. Chris got Chase and Fannin. On Sunday, we were talking about a trade involving Drake London, but after the Sunday night games and Chris needed 5.5 points, the original trade was going to be Drake London and Evan Ingram, but he was worried that Ingram wasn't going to get him the points, and so he was like, okay, let's do a deal with Chase instead. And so sadly, if we stuck with the original deal, if he got London and Ingram and started Ingram, he would be safe, and Reagan, he would have been chopped. I'm sure we all have those different stories over the weeks of just like one move here or there. We could have been safe or we could have been out. That's kind of the fun part of this league. But I definitely I could not sleep that Monday night until Achane got above Reagan. It felt like it took a little bit. I know he was projected for a lot of points and he had a decent game, but it wasn't until that touchdown that I could really turn off the game and go to sleep. Week 5, we got some buys for the first time. We got the Packers, the Falcons, Steelers, and Bears, and there's some big names here. Josh Jacobs, so the running back wise, Jacobs, Bijan, Warren, Swift, even Gainwell. That's why Fleming had so many points this last week. Our pass catchers, a mixture of tight ends and wide receivers, Kraft and Romeo Dobbs. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, DK Metcalf, Odunze, Caleb Moore to a lesser extent, but he's even a free agent right now. No one's picked him up because I had him and then dropped him. A couple QBs that probably would have been started: Jordan Love, Caleb Williams. So this is gonna really shift this week. I know different people are feeling it more than others. But the bye weeks are something that's going to come into play in these next few weeks. Running through all the teams again from their scores this previous week. Fleming had another excellent week. Looking at what Fantasy Pros has listed for him, it's probably not ideal to have two Washington running backs as your last flexes, but obviously the roster is fantastic. He's still going to be in the top half of the league, even with Bijan on a bye. Like, he's a team that has probably the best player that's on a bye, and it's not going to be impacted. He spent a 182 on Monty this week. I'm assuming he did that because Bijan is on a bye. I think it was probably an overpay only because he doesn't need Monty. I think Monty's going to be a strong start for the handful of weeks, but Fleming's not going to need him long term. He probably wants the money more long term, but we'll see. Maybe this is a week by week game. You got to get through this week to get to the next one. Zach had a fantastic week. Kayshon Boutte looks like he's taking a backseat to Stephon Diggs, so that's going to hurt his team. He has so Zach's team is the one that's probably most impacted by buys. He has Metcalf, Odunze, and Jacobs. And so those are maybe some of his top players. He's gonna be hurting this week. I think he got great value for Wan'Dale Robinson. I think that was a fantastic pickup. He also has Bucky Irving, who is questionable. So there's a chance that he is. He's going to have to make a move because that will be 4 players out. Michael Penix is on a bye that fills out the entire bench. Not to mention he has Joe Mixon, who's obviously not playing this week. He can probably be dropped. If Zach doesn't do something big, he's going to be in real trouble this week. He's one that the week 5 buys are really getting to. Plus the Bucky injury is tough. Brian, sorry, I was wrong. He was top 3 again. And he has great matchups this week. I think he probably stays at the top. We might see him up here more often than not. He got great outings from his running backs. Justin Fields ripped off that long touchdown run. Darren Waller only played a handful of snaps, but he capitalized with 2 touchdowns. I think his role is going to just grow more and more because he's coming back from injury. No Tyreek, so I think that's probably a pretty good tight end at this point. Trey Tucker finally comes back down to earth. We knew he couldn't keep that up, and he had a bad outing. But all in all, this is looking like a pretty good team for this week. For Landon's team, Puka continues to dominate. He continues to have probably a top 2 wide receiver room and maybe the worst running back room. Chase Brown and all the Bengals offense is just awful. Dak had an unbelievable game last week and probably continues to play well since their defense is terrible. He could have another really high-scoring game against the Jets just because that game could be another 40-40 tie. Stephon Diggs clearly has stepped into that alpha role in New England and just continues to show that he has a great wide receiver room here. Kevin goes crazy on the waiver wire. He spends $400 for Tyler Warren, $400 for Cam Scatterbo. All of a sudden, he's got $200 left. Maybe he was worried because for a little bit his team was there at the bottom this week, but ended up in the top half. 200 is something to work with, but it's going to be harder and harder to get great players. Tyler Warren can definitely be started all year. He seems to be fantastic. I think Cam Scatterbo is more in the short term. He's a good back. He's getting a lot of touches, the red zone work. But when Tracy comes back, I definitely rather had Judkins than Scatterbo, and Judkins went for even less. But Kevin's playing the let's just get through each week, and it seems like his team is set up for success in these coming weeks. Isaiah spends 345 on Judkins. I think that's a good pickup. That was definitely the player that I wanted out of everyone that Chris dropped, and I think he's clearly taken over the role. He's playing really well. This is a team that's super solid across the board. This is probably the best wide receiver room because Nico, Pickens, Buka would all be the top wide receiver for almost any team out there. Brian Thomas Jr. continues to disappoint, but he's still, he's a great flex at this point. There's still 14 teams in the league, and he's still getting volume even though it's not great. I don't necessarily love a Trevor Lawrence with Brian Thomas Jr. I think we're too early to stack our running backs our wide receivers and quarterbacks. But it's still, this is a good team, and in sleeper he's projected to be one of the highest scores, and that's not to mention that he has CeeDee Lamb on the bench ready to come in, and so his wide receiver room is going to get even deeper in a few weeks. His team is set up for great success this year. Bailey, he's got he takes a little risk on Lamar. He spends $100 to get a top 2 QB in the long term. Like, I feel like him and Josh Allen are the 2 QBs you're going to want in the end of the game. Now he just needs to survive long enough to use him. I was interested in spending up to get Lamar, but I kind of was hoping that someone would bid on him and then get eliminated, and I could get him later. Bailey also spends $335 on Jamar Chase. It'll be interesting if the Bengals can get going at all. I'd love to see Jameis Winston traded there. I don't know. I've not heard that anywhere. I don't know if that's even a possibility, but I just feel like he would be really fun for that offense. And then all of a sudden, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase would be great fantasy starters again. Jake Ferguson has turned into a really solid top tight end, continues to see a lot of targets. Just like I was talking about Dak earlier, they need to throw, they need to score. And if Terry and Daniels are back this weekend, that's going to be a huge lift for Bailey's team. Bailey's looking quite good in this short term. Johnny's team, Johnny and I battle over $0 bids. He got Tua and Hunt for $0. Looks like Waddle is going to be a really great flex, especially with Tyreek out. It's interesting looking at Fantasy Pros. Fantasy Pros and Sleeper continue to say that A.J. Brown is a great starter, and he's a great player. I would rather have Jalen Waddle over A.J. Brown. Looking at Johnny's lineup, looks like he does as well because A.J. Brown is on the bench. He's going with Rashid Shaheed instead. I think he's going for the higher floor and the lower ceiling, and that makes sense at this point in the time. He's going to hold on to Brown, hoping that the Eagles' offense really turns it around. But it's hard to start a player that can get you 1 to 4 points, even though the upside is clearly there. He's one of the most talented wide receivers in the league, but he's just not producing at all. Mason's team, a lot of yellow, so just a lot of just really solid plays across the board. Mason is starting Mahomes and has Bo Nix and Daniel Jones on the bench. Spoiler for my team, I would love to have any of those quarterbacks starting for me. Looks like Chris Godwin is back, and he looks great. Got a lot of targets. This could be a really good flex play, especially until Mike Evans comes back. I was hoping that Kate Otten was going to get more of those targets, and it looks like Chris Godwin is stepping right back into his old role. T. Higgins looks just not good. I would rather have Godwin than T. Higgins, so I would disagree with Fantasy Pros just on how they have those listed out. But I think Mason's team is decent across the board. Pollard continues to get good volume, but Arizona could be a tricky matchup here. Caleb spends $160 on J-Mo. He spends $76 on Malik Washington. The Malik Washington one's tough. He was the only one to even bid on him. Could have got him for $0. Caleb's in a bit of trouble. He has Benson out for a few weeks. He has Cedric Tillman out. Brock Purdy is out as well. He might need to start Theo Johnson, Malik Washington, and Xavier Legette as his 3 flexes. If JMO is underperforming, if he has one of his classic 5 targets, 100 air yards, but a catch for 15 yards, Caleb's going to be really in trouble. Between Kenneth Walker and Kyron, they get a good amount of volume, but they also put up their duds every once in a while. This is definitely a team on watch this week. My team, man, what a roller coaster this last week. I was excited about getting Devontae Smith a couple weeks ago, and now I can't stand him. My wide receivers are tough with Drake London on a bye. I have awesome running backs. Jonathan Taylor and Devon Achane, they could finish 1-2 as a top 2 running backs this week, but then my wide receivers are just awful. It'll be interesting how the Cardinals backfield shakes out. I'll be starting Michael Carter in this league and Imari in the other Guillotine League, just hoping that one of them gets a majority of the load. Maybe this means that Kyler's going to run more, but who knows? I am not excited about starting Spencer Rattler. The fact that I picked up Joe Flacco only for him to get benched to start maybe the quarterback on the worst team in the league is not exciting. But here we are. I am excited about picking up Keandre Miller for 0. Talking about those $0 bids that Johnny and I were battling out for. I'm excited about him because I think either Kamara gets traded or Miller, it seems to be taking over some of the role, at least. It's definitely more of a timeshare. So I'm down on Kamara. I am up on Keandre. And I'm hoping that's a long-term, at least a middling-term flex play for me. Jay continues to hold all of his $1,000 and not make any moves. He is fully leaning into the TVR model. The crazy thing is, I think his team is set up for a really good week. Rashad White is probably stepping into a lead role with Bucky Irving injured. Quentin Johnson continues to see success at the expense of Vlad McConkey. Again, he just keeps starting Ollie Gordon, and Ollie Gordon gets he's getting a lot of goal line work. And they're playing the Panthers, who are not great. I mean, obviously the Dolphins aren't great either. I think this week is going to be Jay's best score. He probably ends up in the top half. Brogan's team, after spending really big last week, Brogan was near the bottom of all the scores. It seems like Ladd is going to need an injury to Keenan Allen to step back into a major role. It's really tough that he spent $350 for a half game of Tyreek Hill. I think that is part of the lesson of spending fab, is that you might think you're bidding on a player that you're going to use the entire season, but you just never know with injuries. You're going to want to hold on to some money. Selfishly, I like when people spend big on players that I don't want, because then there's money out of the league and my percentage keeps going up. I think it would be shocking if Brogan is in the bottom 3 again, just because he has a solid team across the board. Jordan Addison seems to be stepping right back into the role that he had pre-injury last year. That offense is not humming, but the fact that he saw a good amount of targets and he played well, I think that's a really good flex at this point of the year. Reagan's team survived by the skin of his teeth. Chase just needed one more catch to knock Reagan out. It looks like Jaden Daniels is returning, and so that should be a really good boost to Reagan's team. And CMC plays tonight, and that's going to give Reagan a pretty good idea of how his team is going to do. His team is going to go as CMC goes. Nick Chubb is losing a lot of work to Woody Marks. I think Reagan's going to be living on the edge again this week. There's not quite as many moves that he can make, but he's going to be. It's going to be close here with a few of these teams. Our Week 5 rankings. First of all, I want to congratulate Brian for getting out of the bottom 3 of Fantasy Pros rankings. The lineups weren't set in Sleeper when I made this graphic, so I just guessed on what people would do. Like currently, Zach is starting 3 players on a bye. Now, I don't think he's going to actually start 3 players on a bye, and so I just guess on who he would plug in. That being said, his team is still the worst because he has a bunch of buys and a bunch of injured players. It's interesting that Kevin's team has the highest rated sleeper projection. Fantasy Pros has him 7th. I don't think he's going to be in danger this week, but it's just interesting the different dynamics. Whereas Isaiah is rated really high on both of them, and then we have our kind of bottom half of the league is rated pretty low on all of them. Recap of some of my picks. I had some good ones and some terrible ones. Jamar Gibbs is just fantastic. Doesn't matter who he's playing. Kareem Hunt and Bateman had mediocre games. Garrett Wilson had an excellent game Monday night. Dalton Kincaid, I kind of feel like I had a good pick, but he had 1 catch with 2 targets. That 1 catch happened to be a 28-yard touchdown catch. You take that away, and not only did I nail that pick, but also Reagan goes home. Zay Flowers bounced back. Stephon Diggs looked fantastic. Ladd is just not looking good. I still am a believer, but maybe it's just because there's talent, and it's just hard to believe that he's going to be pushed out of the offense by the old man, Keenan Allen. A.D. Mitchell had a great game. It would have been a fantastic game if his 76-yard fumble turned into a 76-yard touchdown as he tried to stretch out the ball to get the touchdown and fumbled it through the end zone. So his score was almost crazy high, and I can't believe I didn't even think about starting him. Noah Gray, maybe it's the last time I suggest starting a tight end 2 in this league, but he is clearly not taking over the role from Travis Kelce. My players for that are going to underperform this weekend. This is our weekly Cleveland run defense. Jordan Mason plays Cleveland. I do think there's something about them being in Europe for the whole week, whereas Cleveland is going out this week. So I think Minnesota is going to have a leg up on them, which I think plays out other places than the rushing attack. Xavier Worthy had just the whole Chiefs offense had a great week. They played the Jags, who I don't think are going to be great, and I think the Chiefs try to fix their run game this weekend. The run game is really bad, and maybe that's some end arounds with Worthy, but I don't think the Chiefs offense looks near as good just because they don't have to against the Jaguars. Alvin Kamara has not looked great. Keandre Miller is definitely eating into that role. Miller's getting some red zone touches. The Giants are a decent matchup, but the Saints are just really, really bad. And Kamara's getting fewer and fewer touches. I don't know if they're trying to rest him so he doesn't get injured so they can trade him somewhere, or if they do really like Keandre Miller. When Keandre Miller came into the league, there was all sorts of reports that it was going to be a timeshare, 50-50 split. Miller had a lot of injuries his first season, and so now fast forward a little bit, I think we are going to start seeing this timeshare. J.K. Dobbins, as you can tell, I'm just not a believer in Dobbins. Harvey, I think, just looks more explosive. It looked like more of a timeshare when you look at the box score, but I do think J.K. Dobbins got most of the work when the game was close. Although it hasn't happened yet, one of these days it's going to be more of a split, and Dobbins is not just going to get all this work. Right now, he's been a fantastic draft pick and a fantastic player. I'm just not a believer in Dobbins, and he'll probably be a miss again this week. Players that I think are going to do better. Jonathan Taylor, he had a good week last week, but I think he could be the RB1 this week. He is fantastic. Their rushing attack is great. Justin Fields had a good week, but now this might be another weekly segment of which quarterback is playing the Cowboys. The Cowboys are awful on defense, and I think Justin Fields and maybe the entire offense, like Wilson and Hall, have good games. Brenton Strange has been the security blanket for Trevor Lawrence. I think Chris Jones is going to be pressuring Trevor Lawrence a lot this game, and so I think Strange is going to see a lot of targets. He probably has 7 or 8 catches for 50 yards, and that's going to get you about 10 points. I think 10 points from a tight end is excellent, and so I like his chance to have a really solid floor with the chance of a really big game. Like I was saying earlier, the Vikings get the Browns overseas, and the Vikings have already been there. Last week, Naylor got 3 end zone targets. I think they might have even been like 3 in a row. It was weird. While Justin Jefferson got nothing, it was after Jordan Mason got tackled on the 1-yard line, and they just kept throwing it to Naylor. I don't think they can run the ball this week, but I think they're going to do a lot through the air. So I think Justin Jefferson has a pretty big game here. I like the idea of having a free agent guy in this category. Jake Tongs, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. I think he is my long shot of the week. He's a free agent out there. He is in line for a lot of work. There's no Yohan Jennings, and Ricky Pearsall is out. I think he's a pretty good start. That being said, the last time I suggested a tight end that was on waivers, he got 0.6 points. So we will see. Monday Night Football, we have a good handful of players. I'm not sure this is an exciting game, but we got Mahomes, Kelsey, Worthy, Hollywood, Pacheco, Hunt, Etienne, Brian Thomas Jr., Tootin, Strange, and Hunter. All of these guys are on teams. Most of them are started. I actually have a handful of these guys as Hollywood, Hunter, and Tootin are all on my team. I will start a combination of them, not all 3. But for the most part, I think everyone else, maybe except for Kareem Hunt, is in a starting lineup. So again, we could have things that come down to Monday night. Probably not going to be quite as close as this last week since there were 2 games. A lot of teams were still on the chopping block. But it's always fun when it comes down to Monday Night Football. All right, my hot take to say who's going to be out / this is basically guaranteeing someone's going to be safe is Mason. Part of this is selfish. I really want him to go home so I can get some of his quarterbacks. I don't want to be starting Rattler, and he has 3 very good quarterbacks. I don't like T. Higgins in this offense. Zach Charbonnet has a really bad matchup. The Chiefs probably don't need to throw a lot against Jacksonville, so Mahomes might not have a great game. Saquon has not looked great, and the Broncos defense is starting to round into form. This could all be for naught because he has Garrett Wilson, and playing against the Cowboys is a magical way to get fantasy points. So Garrett Wilson could single-handedly save Mason, but I think Mason is definitely going to be in the lower half, probably bottom 3, and riding it out with Reagan and a couple of our other teams at the bottom. Well, hope you enjoyed, and good luck this week. Stay safe, and see you all next week.